Kuzan versus Borsalino would be an insane development that not a whole lot of us had even thought about prior to this week. Like, imagine having that fight happening simultaneously as Luffy and Blackbeard duke it out for the One Piece. I was actually thinking that 1100 was going to turn out to be a pretty tragic one, but it actually turned out to be surprisingly joyful. It's the essential piece of the puzzle that answers what led to Kuma's transformation into a machine that does the government's bidding. And there's a lot of pre-time skip moments now involving Kuma that hit differently now that we know what we know. For example, I heard Greg point out that Kuma's first line in the story is him saying that he's right on target, and now we know that he was a target himself because he was a slave and he was being hunted during the Gods Valley tournament. Apparently Khalifa had a twin sister that was in charge of monitoring Bonney and keeping her held hostage. Either that or the nurse is actually Khalifa. I mean, she was pretending to be a secretary when we first met her back in Water 7, so I'm guessing Bonney escaped her, and that's what Akainu meant when he said what he said right before the time skip. I'm sure those two guys that appear with her in Zabodi must have helped her out. Going back to Khalifa, the way that Cipher Pol works is that you sort of fail upwards, because all the CP9 members that we met back in Enius Lobby are currently now CP0 members. And so if Alufa, or Alpha, is a CP8 member here, it makes perfect sense that she would eventually end up in CP9. We also get a small panel of a younger version of Drake, which reminds me of how Gru said that Sword had lost contact with him. So it's interesting that Oda is showing us that Drake knows where Egghead is. So if he wanted to stop by, he could.
This chapter also got me to think about something that I hadn't thought about in a while. So I went back and did some reading and I was like, whoa! It's like Oda dropped a crucial piece of information back in volume 5 of the story that now kind of feels like a spoiler. So I'll share that with you by the end, because there's still like a lot of little like pieces of information and Easter eggs in this chapter that I want to just kind of like put out there in case you missed them. For example, in the official translation, Kuma tells Bonney that the next time they meet, they'll be able to see the horizon together. So I'm wondering if that could be referencing them being able to get a glimpse of Luffy/Nika bringing in the dawn. Another thing that gets brought up again here is Bonney's dream of wanting to visit different locations all around the world, which actually kind of coincides with Nami's dream of being able to draw a map of the world. And so I thought about this. If it is true that one of the Straw Hats will eventually get Kuma's power, then maybe whoever gets the Pawpaw Fruit will be able to help the girls achieve both of their dreams. Now, remember how a couple of chapters back we saw that Kuma was trying to get to Egghead, or at least it appeared like he was trying to get to Egghead, and he crashed into the red line, right? Because he was coming in from Paradise. So there is a theory, a very popular theory, that says that Luffy will be destroying the red line. Because there's that prophecy from Madame Shirley that says that he'll destroy Fishman Island, and Fishman Island is right under the red line. So once Luffy destroys the red line by the end of the series, whoever has the Pawpaw Fruit won't have to worry about crashing into anything. They can just travel freely all around the world, because there'll be nothing to crash into.
Overall, there were a lot of cameos this week. It kind of felt like one of those chapters that we get in between arcs. The rain-making ship that Crocodile references is this one right here. Croc was using it with dance powder to create a drought in Alabasta, and it was later taken into custody by the Marines at the end of the arc. I'm pretty sure the second Shichibukai that has the title of king that Jinbei is referencing is Doflamingo, because Dofi should be king of Dressrosa at this point. And we already knew that Ace was offered the title of Shichibukai, and that he refused it, but now we got the reveal that he actually defeated the previous warlord who Kuma ended up replacing. And so this has gotten some fans to speculate that the Shichibukai that Ace defeated is none other than the man with the burnt scar / the man marked by fire or flames. And so that would mean that this man has to be a pirate, if that's the case. Now this might be a reach, but I happen to think that the man marked by flames is Scopper Gabbin. And I think it could still work here, because one of the things that we know about Ace is that he kind of grew up to be resentful about his blood relationship with Roger, because without knowing anything about it, people would just automatically demonize Roger's offspring. So maybe he ran into Scopper and Scopper said something and that caused a fight between them. I mean, it's not like Ace was actively trying to take away the title of Shichibukai from anyone, because again, he refused the title when he was offered it. We also don't know what ended up happening to the Odo Jackson, and so I'm guessing that Scopper took it into hiding. The man marked by fire is said to be aboard a black ship with black sails, so maybe that's what Scopper did to cover up the Odo Jackson. And even from a power scaling standpoint, Ace defeating Scopper wouldn't be that much of a stretch either. I mean, because we saw Ace be on par with both Jinbei and Yamato in 1v1s. So I think Jinbei is around 2nd YC level and Yamato is like at least first YC level, and Scopper was number 3, under Roger and Rayleigh, so that would still work. The only thing that Oda would need to explain if Scopper was the Shichibukai is why it was that he accepted the government's offer to become a warlord in the first place. Again, Dragon appears to be a master of wasting panels in this flashback. I honestly don't know what Oda's trying to do with him here. I really don't. Like, I understand why Mihawk and Hancock make an appearance, because thematically, Oda's trying to showcase all of the warlords reacting to the news, but that panel with Dragon is like, what is the point of it? Even Alvida's dialogue has more value than what Dragon's ellipsis offers, because she's highlighting the possibility that Whitebeard was also a buccaneer, which would fit given his durability and muscle structure. Also, if Weevil turns out to be a clone of Whitebeard, then that also fits, because like he has the buccaneer body type to a T. Also, the revolutionary trio of Sabo, Koala, and Hack are shown getting informed. It's still pretty baffling that Sabo appears to be reading the newspaper on a regular basis, yet somehow he just doesn't remember who Ace is. Like, I'm not saying that he's reading about Ace here, but if he does read the paper on a regular basis, you know, a piece about Ace or a picture of him would show up eventually. But no, plot-convenient amnesia prevents Sabo from remembering anything about his brother Ace up until the end of Marineford, once Ace is already dead. And Moria's reaction to Kuma's power is pretty similar to the reaction that some of the Straw Hats had back in Thriller Bark, when they learned that Kuma had the pawpaw fruit. I feel like 1100 accentuates the possibility of Kuma being a member of the family of D, because if we look at the way that Vegapunk frames Saturn's condition about removing Kuma's free will, Vegapunk yells that that would be essentially the same as killing him, and yet Kuma smiles because he's so happy that he'll be able to cure Bonney with this sacrifice. And so one of the traits that we know of the people of D, with the exception of Blackbeard, is that they tend to smile in the face of death. Also, it seems like Oda liked the idea of having a fun pizza party so much that he ended up drawing it twice. I'm sure he thought about this Bonney and Kuma scene first though, because not only can you tell from the basil leaf on the slice that Bonney is eating that the pizza is actually a margarita pizza, which, as revealed in a previous SBS, that is Bonney's favorite food, but a pizza is also part of Bonney's Jolly Roger design as well. So I'm sure Oda must have thought about this scene way in advance. Now, before the party takes place, we see a ship arriving at the island that says Umit Cargo Ship, and Umit was one of the characters that Big Mom invited to her tea party. He's one of the leaders of the Underworld who had a shipping business. And so just like Neufeld had a hand in financing Mads, and the Pacifist Project, Umit was also a type of provider here as well. By the end, we see Kuma has adopted Bonney's drawing as part of his Jolly Roger, which kind of reminds me of the drawing that Luffy did for Foxy. And in order to hype Luffy up as being special, Kuma is on his way to Windmill Village, or Fuchsia Village, where we see Luffy continuing to work on himself so that he can go out to sea just like Ace did. Now, the idea that some fans had about this is that Kuma is going to be ordered to take back the Gomu Gomu no Mi, which I think could turn out to be a very accurate prediction. Because ultimately the purpose of this upcoming scene is going to be to frame Luffy as someone who is meant to accomplish great things, or as somebody who's worthy enough to inherit Nika's powers. Speaking of which, Kizaru was straight up doing the Nika dance at the pizza party, which is interesting because excluding Kizaru, all of the characters in that scene have turned into Luffy's allies to some extent. And I remember that even when Kizaru was put in a position where he needed to take down Sentomaru, he still left Sentomaru with enough energy to come back for him to be able to save Bonney's life. That plus the fact that we still haven't seen his monkey-themed attack or his awakening, if he has it. He also looks conflicted in those panels where he's listening to what will eventually happen to Kuma. Like, his expression reminds me a lot of the same face that Aokiji had when Garp was getting iced in Hashinosu. Plus, the chapter literally starts with Kizaru telling Vegapunk that he should pay more attention to his surroundings, because there was a black Dendenmushi that had been planted there to spy on him. So all that stuff put together just gets me to think that Borsalino has been fooling around on purpose. But the biggest tell for me is when he had a clear shot at the Vega tank, which was transporting Vegapunk, and he missed. He's like, oops. Mind you, this is the guy who was able to snipe a key at a distance in Marineford. I'm sorry, but like, how the can you snipe a key from that far away and then not be able to hit a tank?
How could you miss? It was 3 feet in front of you!
Now, to be completely fair here, we don't exactly know if Kizaru knows what that dance represents. But it'd be cool though if he does end up playing a role in this upcoming major incident of Egghead, and he does end up leaving Egghead with the Straw Hats, and so that would make it so that there's now a Yonko working together with an admiral, just like with Blackbeard and Aokiji. And so if it does turn out that the Blackbeard pirates end up crossing paths with the Straw Hats along with Kizaru, like it'd be funny if he just goes like, "Oh, it seems the time is now to test our awakening. Aokiji Kuzan." Now, whether Kizaru leaves Egghead with the Straw Hats or not, I do think that it's at least very likely that he will do something to help the Straw Hats escape, because Oda showed that Kizaru now has the authority chip that can allow him to control the Pacifistas and the Seraphim.
The construction of Egghead into the Land of Science / Island of the Future begins to take place, which reminds me that the anime has begun to advertise the arc as starting in the beginning of the new year 2024. So next year will be the year of Egghead in the anime, and it'll also be the year of Elbaf in the manga. And speaking of Elbaf, it's nice to see that even though they were deleted from the live-action adaptation, Oda still remembers the Usopp pirates. Each of the characters obviously shares a name with a vegetable that appears on the cover page: carrot, onion, and pepper. And on that note, in chapter 40, which is the one where Usopp disbands the crew, there are several mini flashbacks to a bunch of lies from Usopp, most of which have already come true, but there's one in particular that hasn't come true that I think is a lot more important now. And that is the panel where we see an angry man, and he's yelling at the gang because they've stolen some of his apples. And so Usopp tells his friends to run because it's the hideous fruit-selling freak.
Now, there's actually another translation for that same panel, and in it, Usopp says, "Run, it's the alien store owner guy." So the bottom line here is that they're stealing some apples. They're stealing some fruit from an alien, okay? And that's the only lie out of that little, flashback section of the chapter that hasn't come true. So alien and fruits. I've talked about this before, but there's a line that Kaku has before he eats his devil fruit where he says that he feels a mysterious power coming from the fruit, kind of like gravity. And he also says that it's hard to believe that these fruits are from this world. Now, I want to read you a piece of an SBS of Oda answering a question about Sanji's eyebrow. This is from volume 7. So a fan asks Oda, why does Sanji's eyebrow curl up at the end? And Oda says, "Now listen, everyone lives in circles. The sun, the moon, and the earth all spin in circles. And if the earth suddenly stopped spinning, then the planet would be covered in tidal waves. It would be terrible." Now remember that Sanji's eyebrow channels that same powerful circular energy. Reflect upon this. You may go. Obviously, both of Sanji's eyebrows have the same spiral that we see on Devil Fruits. Each of the Vinsmoke siblings also have special powers, and they also have that spiral. And then Sanji's mom's name, Sora, means sky. In addition, at one point, Oda drew Sanji as an alien. We know that Sanji has the power of bursting into flames, similar to King, who is a Lunarian. And in the Zoro vs. King fight, there is a moment in the anime where King just straight up turns into a UFO. And he doesn't just turn into one, he actually sounds like a UFO in that scene in the anime. So all of that together, right, starting from Usopp's lie, coupled with the theme that we've been seeing here with some of the names of the major players, such as Sun God Nika, such as Blackbeard being able to use the power of black holes, such as the 5 Elder Stars all being named after planets, such as the ancient weapons also being named after planets. All of these previous pieces of evidence get me to conclude that Devil Fruits originated in outer space. And if Devil Fruits came from space, then that means that the ancient kingdom was also a kingdom from outer space. And not only is this hinted at with the planet satellite model that we saw in O'Hara, but it's also hinted in the newest One Piece opening where we see Nika come down from the moon and burst through the atmosphere to arrive on Earth. Also, the lie about Usopp calling the store owner an alien is surprisingly not in the anime episode that corresponds to that manga chapter. And so I've noticed that when the anime removes scenes from the manga, typically it's because the manga is too heavy on what the truth is. it could be like a spoiler. Like I remember I made a video about this, how the anime removes a bit of dialogue also from Usopp when he mentions that the Sunlight Tree Eve in Fishman Island has to be connected to the Atom Tree. So as you can tell, the cover page really led me down this rabbit hole. It also got me to think about the two races that are pretty much extinct at this point, Lunarians and Buccaneers. Could it be possible that maybe the reason they were wiped out is because they were also from outer space? Because we know, we saw NL find those pictures of Skypians, right, inside of the moon. So maybe Lunarians were also a race that came from outer space. And then the Buccaneers, maybe like they were the first pirates ever. Maybe like they were space pirates that valued freedom. And, you know, that kind of drew them to Joy Boy or to Nika. So to conclude, I'm just going to lock it in here and say that Lunarians, Buccaneers, Devil Fruits, Joy Boy, and the Ancient Kingdom all came from outer space. I'm actually really looking forward to the next couple of chapters because we have very little information to go on what's going to happen next. That's going to do it for me today, guys. If you enjoy my videos, I know this sounds kind of self-explanatory, but please watch them. It really does help out the channel the more content you watch. That's it for me. Thank you again. Take care. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.